The Indianapolis Colts named Daniel Jones their starting quarterback, and it's the final chapter in their complete mismanagement of Anthony Richardson. We'll discuss on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso, with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the brain, Luke Braun. On today's episode, we're going to talk about whether we should be concerned with two terrible preseason performances from the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals, but we got to start with one of our quarterback competition's finally wrapping up, and it's in Indianapolis, where the Colts named Danny Dimes the starter. Before we dive into it, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Luke, are you surprised that the Colts have named Daniel Jones their starter? Quick.
No, I'm a Locked On Colts listener. They've been on this forever.
And speaking of that, our guys from Locked On Colts, and specifically my guy Jake Arthur, breaks down the latest news.
Indianapolis Colts head coach Shane Steichen has named his starting quarterback, and it is none other than Daniel Jones. To not much fanfare, Jones has been named the starter for the 2025 season. Steichen said, he didn't want to comment on whether there's, a certain leash that Jones will have as to when he could get pulled. But he said he's very confident in this decision. He really pointed towards Jones' ability to connect with his teammates, make the correct checks at the line, his efficiency as a passer, his completion percentage, basically all the intangible things that, I guess separate him a little bit from Anthony Richardson is why he has been named the starter. Now, I think the vast majority of us can say that Richardson appeared to win the competition, at least the on-field portion of it. And, Steichen did acknowledge that Richardson made strides there. He's improved. He's gotten better than he was before, but he still has some room to grow. Whereas, Jones, he's very confident in the operation of the offense. And again, all the nuances and all the little stuff that we're all not really going to be able to tell what's what is basically what has led to this, which is kind of, an unfortunate thing. We can't, we can't all tell what's going well and what's not behind the scenes. But, for better or worse, Jones has been declared the starting quarterback this year. And they insist they're not giving up on Richardson. He'll continue to develop behind the scenes, but it's kind of on him.
And I think that's a good place to stop. It's kind of on him. Luke, as Jake said in there, it looked like to him Anthony Richardson had the better camp. And a lot of Colts fans are absolutely angry with this decision because it has seemed with the preseason and the joint practices and the camp reports and the stuff that we've seen, it seems like Richardson won. And you would think if it's even equal, they would go with Richardson because there's still some long-term potential there. So that means when Jake says it's on him, I think that we can ascertain that the things we can't see, Daniel Jones is blowing Anthony Richardson out of the water. The leadership behind the scenes, the professionalism, the being prepared, the being ready for practice, knowing the script. I may be going out on a limb here, Luke, but this is something that I can't help. I think you look at it and what we've seen from Anthony Richardson so far, I don't think that he takes the preparation very serious. I don't think he's mature enough about the quarterback position, not just the on-field, throw it, run it, physical stuff, the mental aspect of playing the game and playing from the professional quarterback position. I don't think that Anthony Richardson is working hard enough behind the scenes.
He's also still, it's a bit of a cliche at this point in his career because this is his third year, but he is younger than several people that quarterbacks that got drafted
crazy
this year.
Yeah.
So that's not wholly unsurprising, but Jake's been on this for a while. Jake in particular has been talking about this since summer, since offseason, since Daniel Jones even got there. He went, they might go with him. And people didn't like to hear that. But I think that there has been an unrest with Anthony Richardson and the Colts for some time. I don't know if it started with or was exacerbated by the time he took himself out of the game, comes to the podium, says he just got tired. That's crazy. I don't know how much of an inciting incident that was versus just fuel on the fire, but like something's up between, and I feel like there will someday be a tell-all that gives us details, because the guy that's playing better quarterback in camp losing the job because of some intangibles, and we are just told we just have to understand it, and we just have to say, oh well,
right,
I guess father knows best, is a really tough sell. There is a missing link there. We'll find out about it someday, but there's some kind of unrest, and I don't know, man. You have a guy with that much talent who is throwing better footballs, and you can't figure out a way to make that guy your quarterback. You have to go with the dude who's new here that has already busted out and is on his third franchise in a calendar year. Man, you don't look very good, Shane Steichen and QB coaching staff.
Well, that and see, that's where, I say I hate to theorize, but no, I love to theorize realistically. But I just think it's clear that if we look at all of the data out in front of us and there's one missing puzzle or one missing piece to the puzzle, it's pretty clear that his teammates don't trust him and they don't respect the work that he puts in. And if you can't lead your teammates, you cannot be the quarterback. So that's the only thing that makes sense to me, is he doesn't take his preparation seriously. He doesn't take his diet seriously, or just, there are all field things that his teammates don't trust in him and believe in him. And that's why you can't ultimately go with him. And we wouldn't see that no matter how many practice reports and things we saw. But let me say that I had the conversation this way because we have to try to understand why the Colts would do this. But at the end of the day, the Colts have completely botched the Anthony Richardson situation from the jump. He was obviously a project. He was a guy who barely played football in college. You knew you had to be patient. You knew you had to take time with him. You start him right out of the gate. You quit on him in the middle of his second year when he's struggling. You try to sell to the media that you still believe in them, and then you bring in Daniel Jones, and even when it looks like Anthony Richardson won the battle, you go tell the media, no, it's actually Daniel Jones behind the scenes. I'm sorry, this is the total opposite of the way that you should be developing a player like Anthony Richardson. And because of the Peyton Manning cachet and everything with the Colts, they've been the only mature adult in the AFC South for 20 years. Because of that, people give the Colts more of a pass than they would other teams. The Colts have botched this entirely. You're right. Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard should be way more on the hot seat, or be discussed way more on the hot seat nationally than they actually are. And I think with ownership changes, because Jim Irsay passed away, and what they've done here to botch this Anthony Richardson thing, if they go out there and Daniel Jones stinks his way to a 5-12 season, I think the new owner, Carly Irsay, could clean house and start fresh. And it would be a good chance to do it because you'll probably have a really high pick, be able to draft a quarterback, and start with a brand new GM and a brand new coach.
The whole thing reeks of impatience to me, and maybe that does have to do with
while preaching patience. They're liars. The Colts organization is a big lie. They act like
preaching patience.
They're preaching patience. We still believe in Anthony Richardson. He's still got a future here, and they're lying, and they're liars, and they should take more heat for it.
Well, it's impatient to start him right away, right? Don't give him his time. It's impatient to quit on him in his second year. It's impatient to move on with the new guy just because you're a little frustrated with it. There's no, hey, we just kind of have to hunker down and work through our issues. There's not a problem solving mentality. There's a problem cutting mentality. You're the cancer. Get out of here. And yeah, maybe it's time, but I mean, I don't know. I think as long as Chris Ballard is at the helm of the Colts will not have a quarterback. That has been proven time and time again. All Chris Ballard has done as GM of the Colts is fail to find a quarterback. How many more chances do you get, buddy? This is like quarterback 6 for you. Yeah,
and he's still living off the Andrew Luck retired early thing, and it's crazy that this is all happening a couple of days after Andrew Luck did an interview and said that he would have played until 40 or 45 if things had gone differently, which has to be salt in the wound for Colts fans when he's the only number 1 pick since like 2012 to have a winning record his rookie season. The only one. I mean, Andrew Luck was generational in every sense of the word. And, you feel bad for the Colts, but you're right. They've had enough time here, and I'm tired of making excuses for him.
Yeah, you want to hear something really funny? Not to make this about the Vikings, but Ryan Grigson is in Minnesota as, again, an executive assistant. There is
Former
a conspiracy
Colts GM.
floating around that he is secretly the one pulling the strings that has built a good team in Minnesota.
Ooh.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. I mean,
No.
I mean, he had
He's
to
the
work
guy
with
that did the
kids.
thing. He's the guy that Andrew Luck is like, yeah,
He ruined Andrew
that guy
Luck.
made
I
different
know.
decisions.
But
he did
listen,
the thing.
hey, man, it's like offensive coordinators. Sometimes as a head coach, no, they can't be the guy. But sometimes as a coordinator, they're a rock star. You know what I mean? So maybe
Valuable voice in the room. That's the way that I understand that he is. But
he has
yeah,
coordinator face.
Tinfoil
That's the only way
hat
to
conspiracy theory going around here that I think Colts fans listening to this would get a kick out of.
Yeah, I'm sure they would be rolling their eyes at that one. But, I
Yeah.
mean, at the end of the day, I think the Colts need a regime change if they blow up this season. And I saw Zach Hicks, guy from Locked On Colts, great point. If you don't believe in Anthony Richardson to the point where he can't win the competition, why didn't you go out and sign Sam Darnold or somebody better than Daniel Jones? That wasn't smart if you didn't believe in Anthony Richardson. But with that being said, talking about some failed situations, I would say the Bengals failed their preseason game against the Washington Commanders on Monday night, and concern about them may be real even with it being preseason. Today's episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before this year. Me, Luke, going to be playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making their millionth league. Yahoo's been doing this for so long. They have a great app, a great draft day process, and to celebrate their 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season right around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you could still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, Luke, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the Indianapolis Colts' decision to roll with Danny Dimes. We got one more quarterback competition still open out there with the New Orleans Saints. Very interesting to see how that plays out. They decided not to announce a starter on Monday or on Tuesday, so we'll keep an eye on that. But the Cincinnati Bengals know their starter is Joe Burrow. They know they're starting offensive line, even though they're maybe bringing in some potential help, which we'll get to. But either way, the Bengals starting defense, the Bengals starting offense for the most part out there against the Washington Commanders. And they had some bright moments because Joe Burrow is good, but there was a lot of clownery with the Cincinnati Bengals as well. The defense got shredded at times. They looked totally unreliable. Luke, I know you have some additional context on that defense. The offense, though, the offensive line is barely blocking people while Burrow's running around like a chicken with his head cut off. He's out there playing without T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I don't know, man. I know it's just preseason, but I am concerned about the Bengals. They cannot afford to not make the playoffs this year with the talent they have. They cannot afford to not get Trey Hendrickson signed and back in this season. They got to find a way to have a good year, and it may just be preseason, but I think some of the concerns we saw with the Bengals in that game against the Commanders are real, and I'm worried about it.
Yeah, so watching that one, I'm less worried than I was about the first game. The first game worries me a lot more than this one. Jaden Daniels, the Commanders, Cliff Kingsbury did a good job, but just looking at the way the Bengals set up their defense, it was the first team, and the first team got smoked again. That's not great. It was also the Commanders' first team, so this is really, nice try. Jaden Daniels and everybody, nice dry run. When you are in the preseason, you don't always want to make the best play call for a situation. You want to make the most testing one because it's an individual thing. You are trying to see who is going to play for me, who's winning the starting job, right? So you want to put them kind of purposefully in some challenging situations, see how they respond. You're trying to information gather. And if that means you give up a big touchdown drive, who cares? It's the preseason. And I think some of that maybe happened because they were in too high that whole time That means 2 deep safeties. That means 1 less guy in the box than you get run on. It's a classic of classics. You go too high, you get run on. And the problem is the linebackers, Logan Wilson, Oren Burks, Demetrius Knight, don't know, or DeMarcus Knight, or did I say that wrong?
Demetrius Knight.
Demetrius Knight. Oh, I was right. I was right.
Yeah. Close.
Point is, those guys, when you're in too high, you have 1 less dude, right? So somebody has to make that up by being responsible for 2 gaps, and they didn't know how to communicate that out. Like a lot of times the linebackers would be responsible for that. They weren't very good at like stack track fallback, for example, where you want to stack up on a defensive tackle and then read the linebacker or read the running back and then either go front side or backside as he does. And they were like bonking into each other, misreading, doing that stuff. So there was also, I think, a little bit of overrunning stuff. One of the D linemen, I forget who, but he got trapped for a big run where he just kind of got caught out in the backfield, out of position. Not a lot. It's like undisciplined. It's not good gap discipline is the coachy word that you would hear about it. And that is a little concerning, but it's also really, really tight margins in cover 2, which might, or in too high, which might be why they called it that way, to specifically expose those problems and try to do a little better. Zach Taylor's playing his ones in the preseason more this year than he ever has. And maybe that's part of it is, okay, let's stress test this. Let's find the issues and make sure we know exactly what to emphasize in the next 2 weeks. That might be the information they wanted. That doesn't mean everything's hunky dory. You screwed up a bunch of stuff. You got to stop doing that. But in a real game, they would have never called it that way. Like that just didn't look like regular season football. It looked very much like preseason football. So I'm willing to kind of hold my tongue on it a little bit more, as critical as I've been of the Bengals this offseason.
Normally, Luke, I'd be with you on that, but I worry because it's Al Golden. And Al Golden just came from Notre Dame. And yes, he had plenty of experience in the NFL and with the Bengals before he went to be the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. But at the end of the day, you go from one of the most respected defensive coordinators in the league in Lou Anarumo, who was, your defensive coordinator when you went to the Super Bowl, and you change to a guy who really impressed you based on what he did in college. So it may just be preseason, and they may be stress testing and all these different things, but it's hard not to look at a defense that I think what happened out there is the Bengals' performance really confirmed a lot of priors that people have about the Bengals. Like the defense is going to be terrible. The offensive line is not fixed. Blah, blah, blah. And it may just be like preseason and like what you're saying of they're not doing everything that like they would normally do. That's confirmed. But I think it's very easy to look at that game and be like, see, all the concerns that we had was right. And quite frankly, I'm falling victim, baby. I'm confirming my priors. I've had concerns about the Bengals all off season, and the things I'm concerned about look like things to be concerned about out there, but they're trying to bring in some offensive line help. And I know, Luke, you're familiar with the name that they may be meeting with.
Sure. Yeah, I have the same priors as you, Tyler. I don't need this game for them. That's why I'm confident enough in my priors. I don't need to overreact to too high preseason football to confirm them. But they bring in for a visit Dalton Reisner. He's a second round pick for the Broncos in 2019, I think he was. And he spent a couple years in Minnesota. Deeply beloved guy, really awesome dude. Sort of a borderline starter / backup that for some reason never signs a free agent contract in March. He always waits until the middle of the season. Maybe he just demands more than he thinks, or maybe he just likes to be that kind of emergency guy because he knows that he's going to be able to get a chance to start and he won't have to go through a whole camp competition about it. But he joined the Vikings in the middle of the season 2 years in a row. And, I think he is a perfectly okay guard. He won't be the best guy. If he's the best guy on your line, you're in big trouble. For the Vikings, they hit him with double teams a lot in pass protection. So you got a lot of easy kind of, double team wins, a lot of nice, that'll inflate your PFF grade a lot. He has good PFF grades. Everybody goes crazy about it. But my thing about him is he plays smaller than he is. He's not a small guard necessarily.
Yeah, bigger bodied guy.
But he doesn't get the push you would expect for a bigger body guy. And he can get out over his skis, get his weight out over his skis a little bit sometimes in pass pro, which can lead to some pretty visible losses, but not to a point where you can't put the guy on the field. You can absolutely put the guy on the field, and where the Bengals are offensive line wise.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what they're looking for. By all means, go ahead and do it. I don't think at this point in his career he's anybody's long-term solution, but to me, he's like the perfect guy for, oh no, our starting guard tore his Achilles in camp. That's where he is for. Or, oh my God, we all suck. Okay, bring that guy.
Yes. And that's probably why he signed so late. You know, he's looking for a good opportunity, but he's more of a break in case of emergency level talent at this point in his career than anything else. But with that being said, there's another team this weekend in the preseason who had a very bad showing, and it was the Buffalo Bills. But I got to tell you, I'm not quite as concerned with Buffalo as I was Cincinnati. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute that you'd like to head to the ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress, and with the money that you save on tickets, you can spend more on food, drinks, merch, even invite a bigger group. Gametime makes it possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop as you get closer to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, a clear seat view, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worrying out of buying. That's why I buy all my tickets on Gametime, whether it's MLB, NBA, WNBA, NFL. I've done concert and comedy tickets on Gametime. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Luke, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the Colts making Danny Dimes their starter. We talked about the Bengals preseason concerns. Now I want to talk about another team that had a terrible preseason outing, and it was the Buffalo Bills losing 38-0 over the weekend. It was truly, truly ugly. Now, before I dive into that, I want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Football. You have hosts Vinny Iyer and our very own, the Data Queen, Michelle Majuk. Listen every single day to prep for your fantasy draft and become the most informed manager so you can take home your league's trophy. Find Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, the Bills had a terrible preseason outing, and my guy Joe Marino from Locked On Bills gave his reaction to the bad game.
And look, it's the preseason. I'm not really interested in conversations about game script or how individual units performed. There's no game planning. It's guys going out there trying to fulfill their individual assignments and make a football team. It's a lot different than, hey, we're game planning against a particular opponent. So it's never bad to play good, right? You always want your team to play well. But I also feel like there's a certain level of pump the brakes, take a deep breath, take it for what it is when you consider where the Bills were at entering this football game.
Maybe it's not fair based on our conversation about the Bengals, but I have absolutely zero concern about the Buffalo Bills. They're a mature football team. They know how to win. They've been through it. They have enough talent. I'm not overly concerned about injuries or anything like that. Would I like them to have a little bit more superstar talent outside of Josh Allen? Sure, but I trust the Bills way more than I trust the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm not worried about the Bills having a bad preseason game.
There's a key difference, which is that the Buffalo Bills played like nobody in this game. And the
right.
Bears brought all their first teamers out. So you do expect, like, if the Bears didn't, drive immediately down the field and score, I would be concerned about the Bears, because they're going up against, like, in that first unit of defense that the Bills sent out, you are not keeping everybody on that team. And this is where the preseason sort of presents problems that it solves itself, where, like, a lot of the mistakes on defense that gave Caleb Williams the openings that he had to find all those throws were specifically on DeMar Hamlin. Cut DeMar Hamlin, problem solved. Like, it's that's, and DeMar Hamlin's been a roster bubble player his whole career, both before and after becoming a clone. So
Luke, that is a joke. That is a joke.
That is a joke.
For the record, shadowy Locked On figures. That's a joke. All right.
But like, he's never been, a bona fide starting player or even a bona fide rostered player. He's right. That's not been his career. And so this just might be the time for him. Same with somebody like Dane Jackson, who made mistakes, right? 7th round pick a few years ago. Maybe he's overstayed his welcome. Me too. I liked him a lot coming up, but the guys on Buffalo that played poorly, when you're out there in that situation where 30 Bills are sitting, I mean, you are down to your barely game day. This looks more like a punt return unit than an actual first team defense. If you're out there, you are fighting for something. If you are playing poorly, you aren't winning that something that you're fighting for. So if the Bills have big problems here, they can just make their cut and their roster decisions based off of that and optimize. You don't like that DeMar Hamlin blows a bunch of coverages? Well, he ain't going to do that for you if he's not on the team. And if you compare that to like what we were talking about with the Bengals, you can't cut Joseph Osai. About it, right? So I'm not concerned about the Bills at all. I think if the other team starts their ones, you start your twos and half of your threes. I don't expect team results at all. Like Joe Marino was saying, it is an individual thing in the preseason. Yeah. That's what you have to look at. The guys that played bad, it's terrible news for them. Very concerned about DeMar Hamlin and what's his name? Joe Anderson, who had a really rough time, 44 on the Bills. I'm very concerned about their roster prospects, and I don't know what the situation is or if there's any serious competition or if they're already kind of anointed. But like, I'm concerned about those guys individually and their future with the Bills. But next time when the Bills play football that counts, none of those guys are going to be on the field. So who cares?
Yeah, that's basically how it is. Now, somebody who might be on the field when the Bills play real football games that matter is Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis, former Buffalo Bill, is going to he took a second visit with the Steelers. He's going to go back. You can always go home again and have a visit with the Bills. I actually think this would be a great move for the Bills. I didn't think the Bills should re-sign him when he became a free agent because he wasn't worth the contract that he was about to get. That proved to be the case in Jacksonville, and they got rid of him after 1 year because he was incredibly overpaid. It reminds me of Jonnu Smith with the New England Patriots in 2021, where they gave him $12 million a year and then ended up having to move on because he wasn't worth that money. Gabe Davis isn't worth the money that Jacksonville gave him, but he's not going to get that money now. And I think his skill set and his familiarity with Josh Allen and the Buffalo offense, I think that would be a good idea because Buffalo's weapons are still something that I'm a little concerned about. And I think having another big-bodied target for Josh Allen would make... There was a reason that Gabe Davis looked good in Buffalo in the first place for way cheaper with way lower expectations. I think it's a perfect fit, and it's got to be either Pittsburgh or Buffalo. But if I'm Gabe Davis, I'd rather go back to Buffalo.
He's got a rapport with Josh Allen. This doesn't move the needle a ton for me. And I don't think Gabe Davis is at the point in his career where he's like offering serious wide receiver 2 potential or anything like that. I think it's still Khalil Shakir and Josh Allen Cooks, Knox, or Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, it's fine. Yeah. But they need
a blow up from Keon Coleman is what they really need. I mean, Gabe Davis.
Yeah, give me that second year lead from Keon Coleman. That'll be a much bigger deal. Gabe Davis, your depth, sure, you're better than Elijah Moore. Good job.
Yeah, if Keon Coleman could blow up, I think that's really what the Bills are banking on. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, the Brain Luke Braun. As we tell you every single episode, thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.